Hi folks, Puffin here. Thank you for joining Making Peace with Goddesses, Gods, and Other Divine Beings. And nice thing about this technique is it works whether you believe in one goddess or many or not any. So we have to recognize that our conceptions of divine fall on a spectrum between beings that are out there and to just ideas within us. Even people that don't believe in gods at all have to recognize that people have ideas about gods. So if nothing else, gods and goddesses and other divine beings are things within ourselves. So given that, if we can open our minds to a perspective that combines these things, kind of like a fish and a light bulb come together to make Mr. Sparkle, there's a recognition that the divine is beyond what we understand and more than what we understand. So there's a way that the divine is more than something outside of us or inside of it. It's both put together. And understanding that that is a way to understand things gives us another way of looking at the questions that we ask so that our questions work differently when we ask them. So right now, a question that has come up that leads a lot of people to question the divine, wonder, is there a goddess, is there a god, is war. And war makes people ask a very common question. The reason I'm doing this is I heard it mentioned on the radio a lot. Many people phrasing the question, why would God allow these things to happen? And I think the first response to that is that it takes away from Putin to say that God is allowing it to happen. People do make decisions. In this case, Putin made a decision to have a war. Now, maybe he's doing that because he follows some evil god. And maybe more of us follow an evil war god than we admit or acknowledge, and give power to that. But we can't blame the god for it. Putin could still betray that god, and he didn't. He still chose war. So it takes it away from him to blame some sort of divine power for war. It's usually a person's mistake that causes wars. But how can we beseech a god or goddess to stop the war, or get some divine being to intervene and not have a war? Well, that's kind of the question we're asking when we ask, how can God or goddess allow a war? And another part of that question when we ask it is often, and what can we do about it? We feel hopeless that we can't do anything. Now, one thing that we already have done just by asking the question is it turns to the idea of God. Usually this is the reason people dismiss goddess or God to say, or to dismiss any idea of a divine being to say, well, how could any divine being allow these things to happen? This is proof divine beings don't exist. Now, we still know they exist within us, and maybe it's different parts of within us or different things accessed within us that we need to recognize and connect with to make it happen. Or it could be divine beings that we're not acknowledging. Either way, our questions and approaches to divine beings often say more about us than they do about these beings. There are projections upon divine beings. Well, I would stop this war if I had power, so why don't you stop the war? Well, Putin does have power, but I'm probably not talking to Putin here. If I am, hey, stop the war. But you're probably not Putin, so you can't stop it yourself. But you want to know what you can do or what a divine being can do. And it's a good start just to seek a divine being. Now, we trip ourselves up and get into this game of who's going to make the first move when we're like, well, if you're a divine being, you should do something. What can I do? I can't do anything as a human being. But if you're a human being that has these divine beings within you, then you start to recognize that there is more you can do. At least more you can do to access different divine beings. It could be that you're seeking out the wrong one or you're asking the wrong question. Now, peace seems to be the answer. We want peace and we want the war to end, for instance. But we may not be approaching it the right way if we're thinking that something outside is going to do something and we haven't done something inside, or there's something inside we could be doing as well. Again, it's kind of like a game of who's going to make the first move. I'm thinking of this because of a radio program on NPR where they were asking a couple of guests, and one of them was mentioning a story that mystics often give that says when people ask, well, how do people, why would there be so much suffering? Well, when they ask this same question. And the story, he says, they always tell the same story. And it is the person experiences all the suffering and then sees an orphan child suffering and asks, God, how can you allow this suffering? Or Goddess, how can you allow this suffering? And that night, the God or Goddess appears to them and he says, how do you allow this? Or what are you going to do about it? And the Goddess response is, well, I made you. Now, for us, in modern times, a punchline for that would be, well, what have you done for me lately? Or, me, is that it? Well, that is it. And it's the truth that there is within you the power to do something and to do more than you think. But we sell ourselves short, and we sell the God and Goddesses short and other divine beings. We sell divinity short by challenging them. Well, what are you doing about it? When we're really asking ourselves, what are we doing about it? What am I doing about it? And if we understand our questions towards divinity in that way, they're also questions towards ourselves, then we can see that they challenge our limited understanding. So what we're doing about it is growing in our understanding and realizing that if we think something else is going to make a difference, it is up to us to make a difference. And it's up to us to make a difference, including by contacting the divinity within ourselves and various types of divinity within ourselves, some which we did not previously understand. That's why it's important to remember that divinity is always, there's always more. There's always mystery to it, and there's more in other people and other things, other beings than we understand, which is the real reason to appreciate everything as much as you can, because there is that divinity in everything. So hopefully this helps recognize divinity within ourselves and outside of ourselves conspire to compel us to peace and helping each other in every way we can. And the answer is not to feel frustrated, to feel encouraged that you're already on that path, but keep seeking out those types of divinity that encourage you to grow more and do more. And as you do that, you'll find that response from the world as well. Thanks for listening and sharing and commenting. Love you forever. See you soon.